The levels of depravity shown in this case are extremely rare in Scotland, and the courage of the victims was essential in securing this conviction. This was a long, complex and challenging investigation for a team of officers and staff who had to work through the most harrowing evidence to bring those responsible for these despicable crimes to justice. We remain committed to supporting victims of sexual crime and protecting children from harm and abuse. We will use all available resources to find and arrest the abusers, no matter how much time has passed. I would urge anyone who is a victim of abuse to speak to police in the knowledge that you will be listened to, taken seriously and fully supported. Since the investigation began, we've worked closely with a range of partners in social work, health, education, Crown Office and the third sector to protect and support the victims. Thank you.
Yes, throughout the trial, those in the dock were laughing, they were joking, they didn't take this seriously at all, and even today there was no real remorse. What was the investigation's view on those people as you interviewed them? How would you describe those people convicted today?
I can't really comment on how they've conducted themselves and behaved in the court. However, I think the convictions today speak loud and clear in regards to the abuse and the fact that it won't be tolerated, and that we will use all available resource to investigate and bring those people to justice.
Can you tell us a little bit about the scale of the investigation? It obviously meant lots of work over a long period of time.
Yeah, as I said, this was a long, complex and challenging investigation. There was well over 1,000 lines of inquiry progressed by the investigation team, using all available resource, but we couldn't have done it by ourselves, and it's taken us working alongside our partners in social work, health, education and the third sector to be able to do so.
We understand it's the largest prosecution of child sexual abuse in Scotland. How was this able to go on for so long?
So, Police Scotland are committed to protecting children from harm and abuse. The young victims in this case were supported by specially trained officers and a wide range of partners throughout what was a rather lengthy and complex investigation. However, there will be a multi-agency learning review conducted on the back of the criminal proceedings.
It's obviously quite a disturbing case. How has it impacted the officers that were involved in it?
Yeah, as I've said, the evidence was horrific within this case. And we've been very mindful of the victims' testimonies as well as all the other evidence that we obtained during the investigation. It was disturbing. However, the staff, all the officers involved have been given appropriate support irrespective of their involvement in the case and irrespective of their specialist training. I commend each and every one of them for their professionalism and their tenacity. Every day they protect the most vulnerable members of our community.
What support are the children involved in the case getting now?
As you can imagine, the young victims are being supported by a range of partners, and that has been the case from the beginning, and that will continue.
How concerned are Police Scotland that this has been able to happen without apparent knowledge to authorities?
So as I've said, this is a very rare investigation, and thankfully that's the case in Scotland. And as I said, I wouldn't like to speculate. There will be a learning review undertaken on the conclusion of the criminal proceedings.
You talk about the level of depravity in this case. I mean, a bit like what someone else has said there, how does this compare to what Police Scotland are usually used to dealing with?
This is not the normal, and I think that's probably a good thing. And as I say, we are committed to protecting children from harm and abuse, and we will continue to work closely with all our partners, including Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, to bring those perpetrators to justice.
The NSPCC's described this as one of the worst cases that it's had to deal with in the last number of decades. How does it compare from a policing point of view? Is that a sentiment you would agree with?
Absolutely. As I've said several times now, this is very rare, and the investigation team have done a fantastic job to work tirelessly on this investigation and to get it into the court.
For people at home who sat through some of the evidence in court, we've seen the diligence of the officers, the painstaking evidence, the painstaking piecing together of what have you, the complexities of this case. This was a huge range of charges across such different areas involving so many people, including people who've obviously subsequently passed away. Just really, for people at home, can you give them a sense of the scale of an operation like that and what it takes?
Yeah, as I've said, it was a very long and it was a very challenging and complex investigation. I couldn't be very specific, however, I'm quite comfortable to say that there's been well over 1,000 lines of inquiry being progressed by the investigation team. They worked tirelessly, we used all available resources and we worked closely with our partners to be able to do so.
What would you say to someone who's watching this, who's thinking, oh, I maybe have seen something? We heard so much evidence from people who thought they saw something, may have heard something, but didn't want to be that person who put their hand up. What would you say to anyone watching this tonight who thinks, I may think I've seen something?
I would hope that this would give them the confidence to contact the police if they've heard something, that we will listen to them and we will investigate all opportunities that we possibly could have.
Can I just ask a question about the interviewing of children in this case? Two of the victims, the child victims, were interviewed around 40 times by police. Can you talk us through why that was?
So as I've said, we are committed to protecting children from harm and abuse, and any of those specifics will be looked at as part of the learning review that's to follow.
With the scale of this case, do you think there's a lot to come out of it in terms of learning points for authorities? Was this unlike anything that you have come across before?
It's absolutely like nothing we've come across before, and I think I could probably speak for my partners in that regard as well. I wouldn't like to speculate, however, on what the findings of that learning review will be.
Well, that was Detective Superintendent Nicole Kilbane talking following the jury's decision to find a paedophile gang in Glasgow guilty of a number of charges, 7 people involved in a child abuse ring convicted of a number of charges, including gang rape. The judge described those involved as the depths of human depravity. Detective Superintendent Nicole Kilbane saying there were 1,000 lines of inquiry and that there will be a review on conclusion of court proceedings. Let's bring in our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillies, who was following this trial for us. So, Conor, Detective Superintendent Kilbane laying out there the difficulties and the challenges that the police faced in trying to bring this trial, this case to trial.
That's right, and before we go any further, it's worth saying that what we are going to talk about over the course of the next number of minutes is serious sexual abuse involving a number of children here. So it's worth warning people of what we may be talking about. But this was a police conference here, a police press conference, talking about the evidence being horrific in this case. More than 1,000 lines of inquiry, and to use the phrase, like nothing we have seen before. The detective who led this investigation talking about the painstaking work involved. And that is true because this is an investigation that has lasted a great number of years, with crimes that lasted over a decade. We are talking here about a number of primary school age children being subjected to the most disgusting of child sexual abuse, organised child sexual abuse in a drugs den in Glasgow. These were children who were plied with alcohol and cocaine by these drug addicts who used and abused them for great numbers of a period of time. And the older children in this case were forced to sexually abuse the youngest in this case as well. Paedophiles laughing and joking while those repeated and relentless attacks were carried out. There was also an attempted murder conviction here of 4 of the people who stood trial during this 2-month trial at the High Court in Glasgow. 4 of them were convicted of attempted murder. In those attacks, children were placed in microwaves, they were placed in ovens, they were placed in freezers and fridges, showing the scale of abuse that these people were intent on carrying out. And in fact, there was testimony. These children had to go through reliving the horrific experiences that they endured, and the jury was played pre-recorded evidence from those children where they believed that those who were carrying out the attacks were witches and wizards. The prosecution throughout this trial described the claims as monstrous, and that is what was delivered by the jury today. The NSPCC describing this as one of the worst cases in the last number of decades, not just here in Scotland, but right across the UK, and the gang of 7 will be sentenced in January.
Okay, Connor, in Glasgow, thank you.